Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hey, Pete. We're back for Films and Stuff. How are you today?
I am very good. How are you, Ethan?
Everything is great. We have a big episode today because we are talking about Creed 3, the sequel to the sequel to the sequel of the Rockies
I
sequels.
think this is the 8th movie in the Rocky franchise. Maybe the 9th, something ridiculous.
Yeah. I think it's number 8, right? There were 5 Rockies and now we're at 6, 7, 8.
But does that include Rocky Balboa, which wasn't a numbered Rocky?
You're right. We might be at 9 then, totally.
We might be, but I don't remember. It could be 8 overall because maybe I'm confusing Rocky 5. I don't know. I can't remember, but yeah.
The Rocky Cinematic Universe.
Oh, God, yeah.
So, as we always do, we both saw this in the cinema. Let's set the scene before we dive into it. We both saw it opening weekend. I saw it on a Friday night, and you did the same. Is that right?
I did, yeah. Yeah, I saw it Friday afternoon, but still.
Matinee.
Yeah, matinee.
And what was it? Like crowded, buzzing?
No,
empty?
It was quiet. It was really quiet, actually. I think it was like maybe 5, 6 people, but that's my preferred way of watching movies these days. Right. Unless it's a tentpole, super action blockbuster like Top Gun or something like that.
Right.
I think I prefer the solitude, and B, it's also fewer distractions, so it's easier for me to kind of take notes and take it all in.
Yeah. I saw it at 11:15 p.m. on a Friday.
Okay.
So, Friday is weekend. It's obviously date night. I would have expected it to be packed, but 11:15 is a little bit later than the usual. But I have to say, it was surprisingly busy. I don't know if I would say it was 50% sold out, but I would say it was definitely somewhere between like 30 to 40% of the seats were taken, which I thought, first of all, was pretty good. It's been a long time since I've been in a cinema, like not a boutique cinema, but like a proper big cinema that had attendance.
Mm-hmm.
And also I was a little bit surprised because it was late, and that's more or less like you think of that as kind of like a dude movie, not so much like a romance date night movie, So I thought the turnout was surprisingly good.
What was and this is, maybe a small tangent, but I also see Rocky as a veritably American franchise. I get it. It's boxing. Boxing is universal. That's fine. But something about Rocky screams very much America, right?
Yeah.
It's got an appeal. It's the whole Apollo Creed thing. He's wearing the American stars and stripes on his shorts, and he's got the patriotism kind of thing. So what was it like? What was the atmosphere like in terms of, we're obviously not in America. I'm in London, you're in Dubai. So was it like, were people still jazzed for it? Or you know what I mean? Like, was that kind of that intangible feeling of, America there, or no?
So I think the first thing is, the Rocky series definitely had a very strong American nationalism to it. You mentioned Apollo Creed and everything. I think the last 3 Creeds, and this one especially, have gotten away from that. And even though they're based in, America, in Los Angeles, everything about it is, very culturally American. It's not so much an American story. It's just a story that happens to take place in America. So totally. I think a little bit of that nationalism has been watered down by Michael B. Jordan, and by the fact that it is focused on the sun. But I was still a little bit surprised because it is kind of a niche story, right? It's not a superhero franchise, it's not a sci-fi franchise. Boxing is a little bit gory, a little bit niche, and I think that, and we'll get to this, the love story I don't think is like very strong in Creed. It was a little bit more between, Rocky and Adrian. That was a very...
I think they spent a little bit more time on it, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't find anything about that in the Creed franchise, which we'll get to. So anyway, that's setting up for you and me going to the cinema. And I thought this was definitely a movie that I wanted to see in the cinema, just because it is an action franchise, right? Boxing is inevitably about action. So I really wanted to see it on a big screen. I think that, would probably do it more justice. But in terms of my level of enthusiasm, I was like, nah, Ant-Man, I'm like, I've got to get there for the beginning of Ant-Man. Like, no matter what, I cannot miss, the start of Ant-Man. For Creed, I was kind of like if I'm running late, I'll get there. Maybe I'll miss the trailers at the beginning. Possibly I'll miss like the first, 30 seconds if the popcorn line is long, but I don't feel like I'm going to miss anything in the first, couple minutes of that film. That was kind of my mindset going in. How about you?
Yeah, I can't remember when we spoke about it. It might have been at the end of last year, at the very beginning of this year, when we were talking about the slate of movies coming up.
Right.
So the Creed franchise, first of all, it's not bad, not at all, but it wasn't exciting to me. It wasn't a franchise that made me say, oh my God, I can't believe they're making a third movie. I'm so excited. I need to watch this.
Right.
And I think it's also because I got jaded by the latter half of the Stallone Rockies. Yeah. And while Creed 1 was excellent, and Stallone also got grandfathered into a different kind of role.
Yeah.
I just felt the first one was good. The second one wasn't necessary, but kept the boat going. And I feel the same about this one. At the end of the second one, I said to myself, I hope they don't need, or I don't think they need to make a third movie. I think we're okay. If the franchise ends here, that's fine by me. I don't think they need to keep doing it. And frankly speaking, that's exactly how I feel after I saw this movie again, which is not a bad thing, but it is also an indictment to say that I saw it because, of course, A, that's our jobs, and B, it was a decent movie, but I didn't walk out of the cinema going, man, I can't wait to see if and where this franchise goes next.
So I agree with your post-movie assessment, but I have to say there was something nice about this movie because you mentioned one is a clear transition from Rocky and Stallone, to Creed's son. Mm-hmm. And the second one, obviously with Drago's son, it's still linked to the Rocky franchise. This was the first film. There's no Stallone, and it really stood on its own feet in terms of, the independence of the character, which I thought was refreshing. I thought the storyline I thought the high level storyline was pretty good. I have a few nits that we'll get to in terms of how they pulled it off. And I enjoyed the movie. I think there's a lot of good things about it. I definitely think I got my money's worth, my value's worth, but I'm the same as you. I'm not at all curious as to where the story goes from here, although I understand it's going to continue. The next one comes out, I'll go see it, but I think I will not be that enthused about it.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all, because honestly, it felt like Michael B. Jordan's character story was complete, or you saw where the arc was at the end of the first Creed.
Yep.
And then it really felt complete at the end of the second Creed because we saw the rest of the arc. So I thought, okay, we don't need to see that. And this kind of was like, okay, this is the, like the bonus chapters that you get.
Right.
I expect we're going to see more Creed movies. Let's put it this way. I just don't think it's going to be with Michael Jordan as the lead character. I actually have a sneaking suspicion.
Oh, here we go. This is...
Yep. Yeah, and I think they were setting this up pretty obviously in this movie. And in fact, I thought that what would have made this movie a little bit more interesting is if we had seen a time jump in this film, because I think what they're going to do for Creed 4, if and when they make that movie, is that it's going to be about Creed's daughter. And I think she's going to get into the ring and she's going to be a fighter. She idolizes her dad. You see that, and then you see that she's been seeing all his tapes behind in secret. She's learning to fight in secret with him. She's fighting at school. She's learning to control her anger and her rage and all that kind of thing. It feels like they've set it up in such a way that if the studio decides they don't want to make any more Creed movies for the next 15 years, they won't. But if they want to ever make a legacy sequel, they have the framework to do so.
I don't mean this to be sexist or ageist. I have no desire whatsoever to see a movie about Creed's daughter being a boxer.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't.
I liked her in this movie. I thought she was cute. I thought that she was fine, but like most child actors and child roles in movies where the movie isn't centered around the child, I'd say out of every 100 child acting roles, maybe 3 to 5 of them are scene stealers. 15 to 20 of them, the kid is doing the job they were hired to do. And then, for me, the rest of it is, a majority of it is I could have done without that child actor kind of taking up space on screen.
So I think we can't talk about the child actor or Tessa Thompson without addressing the fact that Tessa Thompson has a disability in the movie. I don't think it's in real life, correct?
Yes, in the movie.
She's hearing impaired in the movie.
Well, yeah, so she's trending towards it.
Yes. And we saw that kind of like in the first one and the second one, it's her ongoing disability, and I'm okay with it. It's a storyline they thought would somehow be relevant or add some, I don't know.
It adds a small flavor. Yeah, exactly.
But that's fine. I have a problem though with one. I'm not sure if this is a hereditary thing, but the daughter seems to be completely deaf, which I think is...
Yeah, they did that when she was born in Creed 2. We learned that, right? So we saw that the kid was born with hearing difficulties.
But this is, again, nothing bad towards hearing impaired people. That's a hard disability to pull off in a movie, right? A movie, by definition, is something visual and there is sound, right? So when one of the characters now has to rely on sign language, you're introducing an element into the film that's automatically like hard to pull off. So, if you really want a disability for whatever reason, you want to add some flavor, you want to add some sympathy, is being hearing impaired the best disability to introduce in a movie?
I think that I didn't have a problem with it. I think it was nice because they laid the groundwork for all the way back to from Creed 1, because she used sign language to talk to Adonis. So Tessa Thompson would use sign language to talk to Adonis or to Michael B. Jordan pre-fight, just to make sure that he was okay, to make sure he was comfortable. And, it was literally a silent language that only the two of them shared.
Yeah.
So I thought, so it's kind of like coded language, even though it's obviously not coded, but which is something that was only shared by the two of them, which then becomes the 3/4 of them with the mom and with the daughter. Yeah. So I didn't have a problem with it. I thought that was absolutely fine. I just think my issue, which again isn't really an issue, is the more fundamental foundational issue, which is they set up a B plot with her.
They really pushed the daughter into the film in a way that was unnecessary, unless it was intentionally
force a fourth movie. Exactly. And that's where the problem
it didn't add anything to
the
this
B
film.
plot in this movie was that she was fighting with students in her school. And that a way to kind of not solve that problem, but a way to kind of, release and get an outlet for that was that she started training with her dad in secret behind her mom's back.
It's too much
But that
family
didn't
drama
pay
for me.
off. But
Yeah,
that didn't pay off in any way
yeah,
because Tessa Thompson never finds out. And if she
yeah,
does, she seems okay with it. But like it's
yeah,
never really addressed again. And so
yeah,
it's just kind of left as like a loose hanging thread. Like
yeah.
it would have been interesting. Even if, you know, at the last scene, and of course, spoiler alert, the very last scene is when the three of them are in the boxing ring in the middle of Dodger Stadium, which by the way, visually was fantastic, but like
Oh, visually it's fantastic.
I have a whole host of problems with, you know, hosting
Same, same.
a boxing match in a baseball arena. Boxing rings are famously small. So you're effectively, you know, anyway, we'll get to that. But the point was that they didn't really ever address that again. So it was a B plot or a C plot that was never talked about again, which clearly means they're either setting it up for Creed 4, if and when they make that, or they just didn't really think it through or finish that thought. That's the fundamental problem I had with it. And which is why it didn't leave a bad taste in my mouth whatsoever, because again, I thought the kid was fantastic. I thought she was very cute. I thought she was very good in that. And I thought the relationship that she had between her parents and her was it felt authentic. It didn't feel manufactured, but it didn't go anywhere either. That was the problem. There was no payoff. So
Strange that the opening scene then, and maybe not the opening scene, but one of the first scenes is you see Michael B. Jordan kind of like taking a nap, and the daughter wakes him up, and then they have this like cute little tea party, right? Where he calls her princess and everything. That's starkly different to the end of the film where, you know, she wants to be a boxer, right? You see at the beginning, at least the relationship with the father, but like it doesn't indicate at the beginning of the movie that she's like a tomboy, that she's like hyper aggressive or like athletic or anything, right? It makes her seem very girly girl at the beginning.
Yeah. But, you know, I think that's a normal trope, is that, you know, girls tend to idolize their fathers at a younger age. So that kind of, that's fine.
What do you think of the main plot, right? The main plot I thought was really what this movie is all about, right? Creed is retired, and we, you know, find that he had a childhood friend. They got in trouble together. The friend's been incarcerated for 16 or 18 years. He's back, right? A lot of guilt on the part of Creed.
Michael B. Jordan, yeah.
Yeah. What did you think of that?
So I think that this was as safe an overall plot as you could go. It wasn't anything super special. It wasn't anything. What I think will make people love this movie, because I don't think anyone's going to hate this movie, but at the same time, I don't think many people are going to love this movie. But for the people who do love this movie, I expect it to be because of the acting and the actors, not because of the story. The story was as safe, middle of the road as you can go. Retired champ, has his own now cadre of boxers that he wants to bring up. Someone that he wronged as a child, or someone that he thought he wronged in his youth, comes back, tries to take everything away from him, and they fight. They have to duke it out to kind of settle their scores. And it's such a cliched and expected and almost boring story. Like at no point did I think Creed was going to lose that final battle.
Yeah, I agree. I think I like the storyline. I have to say, I think this is super cool that, you know, he was kind of the, you know, he had a friend who was a little bit older, who was an exceptional boxer, right? And, you know, they got in some trouble. The friend went away. I liked the whole thing, but I felt like they didn't pull it off quite right in terms of the sequence of events when the guy returned. You know, Jonathan Majors, I thought, did a great job with that character, both as the sympathetic, very polite ex-con, and also as the Mike Tyson-ish, you know, like boxing villain. I thought he played that role exceptional, but I didn't like the way that it kind of presented itself, you know, because he turned up, which is believable. And then he's like, hey man, I still think I've got something left in the tank. I'm going to train, you know, I'm going to work my way up. I totally agree with that. I totally agree that, Michael B. Jordan, should have given him, the training space that he did and given him a shot. I thought it really jumped the tank when they did this manufactured like assault on his fighter's opponent.
Yeah.
Right. I thought this came out of nowhere. And then they did like some brief explanation, a few scenes later where they showed that these two guys were, in prison together.
Prison buddies, yeah.
Obviously, somehow he's paid him off to say, go harm this guy. But I thought that was a nonsense plot. I thought then it was even more nonsense that this guy who's a champ is going to fight this guy who was his sparring partner because, one, there was already bad blood. So I would have preferred if they just would have had the bad blood and that would have led to the fight. But that guy probably should not have fought him. He knew that he was dirty. He already either knew he was going to beat him or knew that he wouldn't beat him. No one's going to go watch that fight, right? They can't hype it. Michael B. Jordan put himself in a terrible position with conflict of interest representing both fighters. Like the whole thing was just, I thought, a disaster.
Also, and this is a Creed problem, but what is like, I am not a boxing expert at all, right? My experience to boxing has been limited to the training I do in my gym. That's it. I'm not actually a boxer. I haven't stepped into the ring and fought, but I feel like there's a professional responsibility of the ref to stop a fight when he's seen illegal blows, which Jonathan Majors does. And when he sees that this is clearly a game over, like this should never have gotten as far as it did. We saw this happen also in Creed 2, by the way. At some point, it's the ref's responsibility to call it then and there, right? Yeah. That first illegal blow, it should have been like, okay, you're out. It's not like when Mike Tyson bit off Evander Holyfield's ear, the ref was like, you're fine. You've still got one more ear. Keep going a few more rounds. That never would happen. So I don't understand why this fight didn't stop then and there. And I think the reason they didn't do that is because they already did the same storyline in the second Creed, right? When he fights Drago loses that first match because
he's disqualified.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think they couldn't have done it again, even though that's clearly what they were doing.
Yeah. I didn't like how that got set up. I thought that just didn't follow the rest of the plausibility of the film. And then I thought the second part to that was, I'm still not clear why, Creed fought him. He's like, oh, well, the guy's giving like interviews and like hurting my feelings in the media. Like, I'm still not clear exactly what the big issue was, right? Creed didn't have to go to his like turf whenever he was having like this bonfire, wherever it was, and confront him. Creed could have just said, look, dude, I gave you a fight. Like, you were
He's
dirty.
A guy on parole. One call to the parole officer, and here's the evidence. This is the guy. Investigate the link between the guy who clearly he's friends with from jail.
Great point. Great point.
This should never have happened, right?
I agree.
And again, this is obviously a movie. We're not, but this is such a glaring plot hole, and it could have been explained away so simply with a few lines of dialogue, or at least addressed. But like, I'm sitting there thinking, well, any reasonable boxing manager who sees the picture of the two of the guys consorting with each other, the first thing I would do is call up the police. I would call up the parole officer and say, hey, by the way, the guy who was supposed to fight was set up by the guy who did fight.
Yeah, very clear. But even that notwithstanding, I'm not sure why Creed cares anymore. Like, it seemed like his whole reason after retiring for 3 years off, he wanted to get in the ring. Why? Because the guy was like running his mouth in interviews. Like, his family wasn't like in physical jeopardy. They weren't really in danger, right? The guy was just like jawing a little bit in the media. Is that the extent of the issue? Am I missing something in the plot?
Yeah, I think that was really more or less it. It was, you took advantage of my good hospitality. You stabbed me in the back by setting up this in bad faith. You jawed on it on ESPN with Steven Smith, and I hate Steven Smith, by the way.
Yeah.
And
but that's
okay,
it.
That's
because
it.
Because like Creed and Tessa Thompson had like this big fireside, like kind of emotional heart to heart, like this was, I felt like not the climax of the movie, but kind of like the emotional climax where they're like, hey, I'm not good at sharing my feelings, blah, 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 blah. And then, he's like, I think the only way that I can make it stop is to fight him. Time out. Make what stop? Like he's just doing interviews. What? You're retired. You retired as a champ. You're allowed to move on for the rest of your life. Whenever someone says, hey, I could have beat you, like, give me a shot. You can't come out of retirement in your 40s and your 50s and your 60s. At some point, you have to be like, hey, I'm retired, man. You're the champ now. Good for you. Go fight a contender. Like, I'm retired. I've got a business to run, And then Tessa Thompson's so serious, like, then you have to fight him. Why? Like, your family's not in jeopardy. Why do you want your retired husband to go back to this?
Who's out of shape?
Yeah, either he could be, first of all, the guy's a dirty fighter. Your husband could be, he could get injured, right? Seriously injured, just like in $1 Million Baby, right?
Where exactly. Where
paralyzed because she fought a dirty, Hilary Swank. She fought a dirty fight. Or if he loses, how is that even better?
Yeah, because that ruins his credibility, or not credibility, but like his,
he returned the champion, his legacy.
Yeah.
There's no upside at all. No upside at all. So that's, I think, my problem with, I like the idea of the plot with Dame coming back and Michael B. Jordan feeling like guilty, he owes him something. I don't like how the plot went from that to Michael B. Jordan feeling like he has to fight him for a reason that's still not like fully defined, except for the fact that he kind of wants to get payback for him hurting his fighter, which is really a referee issue or his fighter's issue. And he kind of wants to stop him saying all these nasty, sarcastic things in interviews. I couldn't get there emotionally in terms of what the stakes were for this.
If he had just pulled out that picture on that show with Steven Smith and made it public that this guy is a bum and that he set up and coordinated this attack, movie over. Plot over, everything complete. We didn't need that. I will say to that point, though, to your point, I did like that we didn't get that cliched, I'm kind of tired of that cliched thing where the husband decides that he needs to get, or, one of the partners, I don't want to say husband, one of the partners decides that he or she wants to get back into the ring or do something that they've decided that they didn't want to do anymore. And then the spouse fights them about it and they have a big problem about it. She actually supported him.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, if you need to get into the ring, whatever. That I thought was a nice expectations subversion, because if that was going to be another bone of contention between the two of them, it would have been it's been played out so much, and it's a tiresome trope that I was happy to see that they didn't do that.
I agree. I have to say, good point. I completely agree with that. Excellent point. It's good to see them aligned. No more Tom Brady, Giselle.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Nice to see, the husband and wife, on the same page. Okay.
So let's talk about some of the good stuff. Can I say that this, like Hustle last year, is quite possibly one of the best boxing movies I've seen in a long time?
You and I messaged about this as soon as I left.
Yeah.
And the one thing I noticed was in the old Rockies, everything was like slow motion,
down to the freeze frame at the end of the movie, right? Exactly.
And this, I felt that they, I don't know if they did it, but it felt like they sped it up because it was very, very fast paced. And the sound of the punches I thought was exceptional. I thought the camera angles where they had sometimes they had a drone kind of hovering above. Sometimes they had a camera below them. I thought it was exceptional choreography of those fight scenes. Really great.
I will say that normally my feeling is that for watching action movies, you should definitely do it in the theater, because there is that, secondary element of the sound effects and the visual effects that you can't replicate at home.
Yeah.
And I normally say that, look, for dramas, if you miss it in the cinema, you will not miss that audiovisual element at home. Whereas I think this is one of the few times where, especially for a sports drama, which is not really about the audiovisual element of it, but this movie, like, you felt those punches. The sound effects were so good.
Yeah.
The visualization was so excellent. Like you
Yeah.
said, I noticed it in particular, not with the above drone shots, but with the below drone shots, and that final knockout where he slips his hand between Jonathan Major's two arms to knock him out. I thought that was absolutely superbly done. And this is going to be one of the rare times where I say that if you're hovering between watching it at home versus watching it in the cinema, I would say that the element of the AV experience that you would get in the cinema would probably drive you into, you should watch it in the cinema, but only if you're already hovering between the two.
I agree. The other thing you mentioned earlier, and I echo it, is the idea to, I think the first fight was in the Staples Center, right, where the Lakers play. It used to be called crypto.com, or for most of us, it's the Staples Center.
Yeah.
That was kind of normal, like nothing great. The one in Dodger Stadium, I agree, it's implausible, but that was super cool.
Again, the visual effects were fantastic. It looked good. It felt, so I remember telling you,
because that's such a famous baseball stadium.
But it felt more like a concert than it did a sporting arena or a sporting event, right? Like, even with the fireworks spelling out his name and things like that, it was nice. But like, I feel bad for anyone who was there to watch the fight, because if you're sitting in and I know this is a uniquely American thing to say, so bear with us, but imagine you're sitting in a seat that's at least 250 meters away from the field, and you're now watching a boxing match, which from where you're standing literally looks like it's in a matchbox, because that's how far away it is from you.
No way.
And baseball arenas aren't like basketball arenas or ice hockey arenas or even football stadiums. They're not known for their giant video screens in the middle. They have them at the very far end. So even though you have a massive screen, it's still a relatively small screen, considering the fact that you're like now at this point almost like a kilometer away. So it becomes I mean, I'm being specious, maybe half kilometer, but still it's a long distance. So anyone who was at that event to watch the fight probably got screwed if they weren't physically on the baseball field.
Yeah, I agree. It's not realistic, but, or it would be a terrible viewing experience, but it was really beautiful to watch. And the other thing that I thought that he did super cool was, remember, we've seen so many boxing movies, right? Round 1, round 2, then you see like, usually they have like something on the screen that says like round 8, 9, you see like all these kind of fightings in the background. What they did here, which I thought was super cool, is remember they just kind of like were ghost boxing, where they
blacked out the arena. No audience. Nobody. No music. It's just the two of them in a dark arena fighting against each other.
Like fighting, like battling. Like for me, it was like, wow, they're like really battling their demons. You know, like nothing else matters. Except like I thought that was a super cool transition to the 12th round. But, and usually we're so used to seeing dramatic 12th round endings, right? Like all the Rockies had like some crazy ending, right? As far as endings go, I thought it was okay. Like
it wasn't. Because I think the dramatic moment was that highlight just between the two of them. I think that was the moment where even I was like, wow, okay, I've not seen anything like this before in a boxing movie, or even in a sports movie. And B, it really, that's when you're like, obviously, it's not really about the boxing anymore. It's really just about the two of them hashing out whatever differences they have.
That's right.
I gotta say, and I think this is because, and I'm probably hung up on this unfairly or not rightly, but I just feel like the ending also seemed a bit limp-wristed, pun intended, because
it really did.
You've just had this slobber knocker of a fight. You're celebrating with your team in your locker room.
Great word. Yeah.
And then you go to the guy who basically stabbed you in the back. He took advantage of you. He jawed at you on national TV. For someone who was so sensitive about getting into and so quick to getting into the fight, it was just weird to see them so quickly get out of the fight and have like, okay, I guess we're friends now. And if you ever need anything, actually do call me, which is weird. I don't know. It just felt a little inconsequential based on what we had just spent the last 2 hours seeing.
Yeah. I have to say, I think you're right about the context of it. But when it happened, I kind of like the idea that, Creed went in there and, kind of like offered the olive branch.
Yeah.
I think kind of the conversation, like, it's not how I would have written it, but I kind of like the gesture of Creed, and I kind of liked that. But I agree, like, within the context of the movie, it seemed to de-escalate all of that tension a little bit too conveniently.
Yeah. This is now maybe not nitpicking, but this is, me putting on our usual Ethan and Pete have a different idea. But what I thought would have been interesting is in that sequence when they were fighting one-on-one without anyone else in a black arena.
Yeah.
I think what would have been cool or interesting is like if they had interspersed the two of them fighting with the two kids fighting, the two of them as kids fighting.
Yeah.
And then letting them jaw while they're fighting. So that they're not just physically battling it out, but they're mentally sparring it out as well and getting it all out of their system.
Yes.
And if that had happened, then you're just like, all right, well, they really have settled their differences. Yeah. But like right now, for me, it's just like, okay, you beat the crap out of each other. Great. But are you telling me that by spending 40 minutes in the ring with each other, beating the tar out of each other, all that other stuff that built up to this movie is just all of a sudden okay? A bit of a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, I think that's the hard pill I've got to swallow as well, which is I didn't see why this fight was necessary. I wish there would have been like a different event, because I kind of saw it coming where, Dame was, how could you not be envious or bitter towards Michael B. Jordan, seeing all of his wealth, everything that he had, even like going down to like the very beginning lunch where he's like, man, I haven't even eaten like food in, like 18 years like this, I thought he was going to really start to like resent Michael B. Jordan's success
from the get-go. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where it was going to, turn like very acrimonious. Or I thought that, Michael B. Jordan was going to do like some type of like, hey, let's just do like a charity sparring or something. And Dame took it too seriously and started to just like wail on Michael B. Jordan. Remember, we saw that kind of like Drago Apollo was supposed to just be
an exhibition match, right?
Yeah. So I thought maybe that's how Creed would introduce Dame to the world. Say, hey, I'm gonna do like a celebrity thing. I'm just gonna spar for like 2 rounds with this dude. He's former Golden Globes.
I can't give you the title shot because you haven't earned it. But let's get in the ring together as for charity.
Yeah, and I thought Dame would like, just kind of like knock his ass out,
and then you set up the third and final fight, which is then Dame against the current champion, who is Michael B. Jordan's thing. And then you allow Michael B. Jordan to transition into the Rocky role.
That's my bigger problem. And I think we could brainstorm about it longer, but that was my issue, is that I just didn't see the natural flow of how Michael B. Jordan had to fight Dame. I really didn't think that Dame did anything bad enough. and I just didn't really see what the purpose was, and I was just trying to find like a stronger link, between those two events. I mean, my second problem is that you could also have a subtitle to this movie being "Bad Decisions by Felicia Rashad" that screwed her son and put him in this position, right?
In a way, yes. I mean, her point was that if I hadn't done this, you wouldn't be the man you are today. But that line cuts both ways, which is this wouldn't have happened if she had done what she had done either.
Yeah.
Right. And such a simple act, just by withholding letters from his best friend.
And with all letters you withhold from your son,
you burn the evidence.
You should always keep them in a shoebox in your closet.
I mean, again, another trope, which is one of my things, which is the thing about the Rocky movies, especially after, or maybe not especially, but certainly after the third Rocky movie onwards, is all of these movies have become incredibly formulaic, right? At the ending of the first movie, it was cool because he loses. The good guy, the protagonist, actually loses. And which we had never really seen on screen before. And you see that they have a begrudging respect for each other, and of course that blossoms into a full-fledged friendship. But it's not that you would have thought that, oh well, it's a Rocky movie, Rocky's got to win. But since then, Rocky movies have kind of been, and by Rocky I mean these boxing franchise movies in the Rocky universe, have been very formulaic. The first act sets up one variation or the other, a down on his luck fighter, or in this case, a retired, out of his prime fighter. The second act is about the downfall of either the fighter or the legacy, the low point in his career up to that point. And then the third act inevitably involves a training montage, which we see for the third time in the Rocky franchise, right?
Yep.
We saw it in Creed 1. We saw it in Creed 2. We're seeing it again in Creed 3. And so we see a training montage, and then it accelerates almost immediately after the training montage straight into the ring. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. The moment you see a training montage in a Rocky movie, you know you're going to go straight into the ring right after. And then there's a little bit of back and forth in the ring in the third act, but inevitably Rocky, or in this case Creed, comes out on top.
What did you think of the training montage? There's been some historically iconic training montages in this franchise. What did you think of this one?
I don't think any of the training montages in the modern films hold a candle to the original. Like, I want to see him punch a side of beef in a freezer. I want to see him hauling logs.
Siberia.
Yeah, I want to see him hauling logs in a snowy cabin, at a snowing cabin. I want to see him because the thing is that Creed, and to a lesser extent Rocky after Rocky 1, is no longer the underdog, right? He's a world champion. And so
here he's arguably not even the good guy. In theory, even though they project Dame, remember, Creed is wearing all white gloves, white trunks. Dame is wearing all black, clearly trying to emulate Mike Tyson a bit. And Dame is projected as the bad guy, but realistically, it's kind of the opposite. That Dame is the guy who took the fall for Creed when they were kids. He's been put away. He came back. He built himself up. He's the underdog who's just trying to get a shot.
Yeah, exactly. The only reason that everyone sides with Michael B. Jordan in this case is because the way he set himself up was through nefarious means.
Right.
Which then he made him the heel in this case, right? And then it kind of showed his true colors, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the point is, I mean, going back to your original question, I think it's hard to show a training montage that's quite epic or quite cool when you're not the underdog, because he's got all the millions of dollars. He's got the best training equipment. He's running with a parachute on his back, things like that. They all look cool, but in terms of overcoming adversity, it's not that great.
Yeah.
I actually think one of the more epic training montages that we saw was in Rocky 3, which was the one where he fights Drago? 3, right? Or 4?
Oh man.
Oh, I think
I
it's
don't know.
4. Whichever one it is, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But the reason the training montage itself wasn't anything special on Rocky's side. But what they did in that movie, which was cool, was while Rocky is training, you saw almost like a simultaneous split screen where you see Drago training as well, right?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
see him like punching those electronic
Yeah.
sensors. You see him
Yes.
getting injected with all the steroids.
Yes.
And so then it becomes really a case of America good, Russia
Yeah.
bad, or communism bad.
Yeah.
And, you know, oh, well, here's this millionaire farm boy who's just a no nonsense. I'm going to train pure organic American hero. And this guy is like, they're using technology and inorganic supplements to make sure that he's the best of the best. Who's
Yeah.
going to win? You know, it was setting up a very obvious dichotomy
Yeah.
between the two.
Yeah.
So while the training montage itself wasn't anything particular or particularly great or
Yeah.
let's say memorable,
The dichotomy between those two was
the
so
juxtaposition
good.
of the two of
Yeah.
them was. But I still think the first one was the best, right? Like when you see him literally in a meat locker punching a side of beef, when you see him hauling a log,
Yep.
all those kinds of things was just like, yeah, that could be me. I mean, obviously not, but like you felt relatable to that.
Yeah.
And since then, I'm not relating to any of these guys because not just because they're in unbelievable physical shape, by the way. I mean, like Jonathan Majors and Michael B. Jordan,
I know
both
they got super
unreal
ripped for this. Yeah.
super jacked, unreal, and good for them. But still, it's not just for that. It's also because like I don't have a team of 4 guys. I don't have a parachute. I don't have a gym. I don't have all these things that these guys have anymore. It no longer becomes an everyman story. Whereas Rocky 1 felt distinctly like it could be an everyman story.
I mean, here they could not do that. Like for a while they showed Jonathan Majors, remember, kind of like doing push-ups in his apartment and stuff. They couldn't do that for the main montage because again, he's supposed to be the bad guy. He can't be the underdog. And that kind of like mixes the message because Michael B. Jordan should be the guy who's got all these fancy like techno gym machines, you know, and, you know, like the perfect, you know, home gym and all the trainers and supplements and stuff. Majors was the underdog, you know, so, and he shouldn't have had anything. So they can't do that. I thought like, you know, they tried a little bit. They showed him like running up the hill with a weighted vest. They showed like pulling the plane, but I agree. Like, it was pretty fluffy and didn't really like.
Speaking of which, what airfield, what gym in the world? You and I have been to gyms wherever we've been, but you tell me in what gym or in what private airfield do you just have a random mirror in the middle of the runway or in the middle of the gym, not against the wall, but on a frame in the middle of the
dangerous
gym?
Yeah.
How stupid. Come on, like as soon as I saw that, like it's such a silly thing, and I know I'm being stupid, and I know I'm being over the top, but come on, man.
Yeah.
You're in the middle of a serious training environment. You're on the middle of a runway. You've just pulled an airplane with a back brace, and there's just this random mirror in the middle of this field. Like, what are you talking about?
And that is like a huge mirror as well.
You
know, like
it's like a giant chalkboard, but instead of a chalkboard, it's a mirror. I didn't understand that.
I know. I didn't pick it up until you mentioned it now, but I agree. Like, good grief, that's crazy. You're right.
For a movie for a franchise, let's not put it that way, that was kind of grounded. And boxing in terms of sports is one of the more grounded sports, right? It's a little bit about flamboyance and showmanship, but really it's just 2 guys getting in a ring beating the snot out of each other. That's it.
And that's why there's so few, when you look at like even MMA, the champions turn over exceptionally quick because everyone is roughly equal in terms of skill and strength and
the shelf life of a champion is very low. Yeah.
But it's really hard to sum up that level of determination, to train like you're an underdog, to train like I've either got to win or it's over for me. It's really hard to do that. Rocky, all the Rocky movies, I think Rocky was able to do it because he always had a very good justification.
Yeah.
Drago was a very good justification.
Yeah, he killed my best friend.
Yes.
My trainer is dying.
Yeah.
I'm broke. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
None of those things apply anymore.
Yeah. None of those applied. And again, maybe that's my problem with Michael B. Jordan, or not with him as an actor, but with Creed in this movie, which is, what are you so mad about?
Yeah.
Like, you're driving and by the way, the Rolls Royce was in entirely too many scenes.
It's so weird to say that, right? And like, he leaves it with the window down and just walks away all the time.
Yeah.
Like, it makes no sense.
Yeah. But like, it's hard for him. I still don't understand what his beef is. He's got a great life. He's got a daughter. He's got his business. You see him on the billboard side, doing commercial for Ralph Lauren. Like, I'm still not clear what is the reason that you need to fight the guy that, to be honest, you kind of screwed, and it's your guilt that's driving your bad feelings. Let him go on with his boxing career. You go on with your life. Let sleeping dogs lie. The guy will stop calling you out after a couple weeks, and that's the end of it.
And they never really addressed this in the movie, but by the way, boxing matches are phenomenal money spinners, right? So even if you lose, losers can still walk away with tens of millions of dollars from a single boxing match.
That's right.
And we don't really ever talk about the finances in the franchises, but like, you saw, he was in what's his face? Dame was in like this crummy 1-bedroom studio, like with like holes in the wall and rats going everywhere. And then the next time we see him, he looks like he's in Tony Stark's mansion, watching TV and calling him out on ESPN.
Yeah.
It's because the money is unbelievable. So it's not like Damian, by the way, like Damian would have walked out of this match with 10, 20, 30 million dollars easily, even though he lost. Like, there's something about this feels inauthentic.
Yeah.
In a way that the first few movies didn't.
Well, that's maybe where we go now, and why we're not looking forward to more Creeds, which is, okay, Creed was a very compelling character, right? And first of all, he was the adopted son of Apollo Creed now, right?
Yeah, well, he was like, not adopted. I think he was like a bastard son.
Because he was like in a group home.
Yeah, I don't know. I can't. This is now, I'm thinking back, because I think Creed 1 came out almost 10 years ago or whatever it was. So,
because when Creed 1 came out, until this movie came out, I always believed that Apollo Creed had Adonis.
Yeah.
And Adonis is like, I never really knew my dad. He died when I was just a baby or something, right? And Rocky was the bridge, to like, hey, your dad was a great guy. I owe your dad something. I'll train you. I know you want to follow in your dad's footsteps. This movie kind of made me think that he lived in a group home with Dame for a while.
Yeah.
And that Adonis was adopted by Apollo and Felicia Rashad, Mary Ann. And he still kept in touch with Dame. Either Dame like was on his own, and because he was a few years older, so he was out of the group home and like living his own life. And that's how the two were connected. If that's the case, then I think I have a less of a connection to Apollo or to Adonis. But even going forward, what now are we going to expect from his daughter if she's going to be fighting? Is she going to be fighting the daughters of, Apollo Creed's old opponents?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing, is there's no
compelling storyline to get behind, right?
It's questionable to me to see what they're going to do or not do in the future franchises.
Yeah.
If they do them at all, right? I mean, again, and no disrespect, the movie was good enough. I just don't think they need to make more.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it.
So one thing we rarely talk about, and one thing I almost never notice, was the soundtrack. And I don't know why, but I really loved the soundtrack in this movie. I never notice it, and even if I do, it's never it's never something that really grabs me enough to say, yeah, you got to really, I want to make sure that I make a point of this, or, I'm going to make sure I listen to it outside. Never. Right. And I mean the full soundtrack. I don't mean like thumping moments for certain things. I mean the full soundtrack. And I think this movie had an unbelievably good soundtrack.
Well, I think it's a very good point that you raised it. And I agree, it's not something that we generally do talk about. And I have to say, I didn't think about it or notice it at all. But I'm trying to think back based on what you've said, and I kind of feel like that's true, but that's a very good point. We should pay more attention to that in other films.
Yeah, and again, it's not that soundtracks in movies are bad or not. Yeah. Generally speaking, they do their job, and they're, 9 times out of 10, they do their job, and 1 time out of 10, they're really exceptional. And I say this as someone who's not an audiophile. I like music, but I don't sit there reading with music on in the background, or certainly like that. It's not a very major part of my daily life, music in general.
Yeah.
Which is why it was interesting which is why I had to make a note of it, was while watching the movie, I was paying attention to the soundtrack, and not because I was specifically listening to it. It's just, it grabbed me. So that's just something to note.
Okay. So now that we're wrapping up with Creed, what is the next big cinematic release that we've got to see? Is it Guardians of the Galaxy, or is there something before that?
Oh no, we've got Shazam before that.
Oh yeah, I saw the I saw the trailer for Shazam, and you saw the trailer for 65 million?
Yeah, in between. No, it's just 65. 65 comes out next week. I'm pretty sure it's next week, and then Shazam the week after.
Can we talk about those 2 trailers quickly?
Yeah, of course.
What is 65?
It looks like Jurassic Park with guns and time travel, or some kind of travel.
So am I getting this right or wrong? The way that I thought I understood it from the trailer is that Adam Driver is from a different galaxy, and he's visiting Earth 65 million years ago, and he crashes, and Earth at that time only had dinosaurs. His spaceship is damaged, and he somehow needs to fight off this T-Rex.
So I think that's what the quote unquote twist or reveal at the end of the movie is going to be.
That's what they want you to think, right?
Yeah, I think I think that there's, because they seem to make it like a techno, not thriller, but like a techno action movie, right? Because he's got a laser gun, he's got gadgets that look cool, but he's fighting dinos, which they're kind of not calling dinos, but it looks like they're aliens, that just happen to be in the shape of dinosaurs. I think what you've said is the twist that we're going to learn at the end of the movie, a la Planet of the Apes. I think he's not going to realize it, or I think he comes from the future, and no one has inhabited Earth for billions of or millions of years or thousands of years, and he somehow goes back in time. That's the way I feel. Who knows? It's such a, I don't want to say generic, but it's just such a weird trailer that way. No story elements, no real story elements or plot beats, nothing.
Yeah, I would say I'm not excited about it, but I will probably see it.
Yeah, it looks like it could be a fun generic action movie, which is a dying breed. So I don't mind. I actually have no qualms with me going into the cinema, checking my brain at the door, and just watching a good popcorn movie for 2 hours.
Would you be more inclined to see this if it was called Jurassic Park: The Beginning?
I wouldn't watch it if it were called Jurassic Park. I wouldn't, just because it's called Jurassic Park.
All right. Shazam. We saw the trailer for Shazam. When did the first Shazam come out? How many years? Because the first thing I noticed was Billy looks dramatically older.
Yeah, I think they all do. I think it's been 4 years.
Okay. You think the trailer was good?
It's fine. It's fine. It looks like it's going to be another generic DC EU kids-ish movie. It doesn't look great. It doesn't look fun. It looks like it could be, there could be a few laughs here and there. I'm not super sure. Of course, as a special preview for a coming up episode, we're going to actually have a few special guests in a round table to discuss Shazam in a couple weeks. So stay tuned for that on the 20th of March.
I thought when I first saw Shazam, when the trailer started, I sincerely thought it was for Transformers because they had the typical baseball stadium, like something was like eating through all the seats and some cars were smashed. Before they showed Billy, I thought, whoa, this has Transformers, Michael Bay, City of Chicago being destroyed, all written all over it.
Absolutely. That's what I mean. It just seems like another generic action movie from DC.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing, but that's just it.
So that is Creed 3. Should we give our ratings quickly? I think we haven't really said them officially. Should we do that?
Yeah. So how did you find Creed 3? Is this a skip? Is this a wait for streaming? Or is this a watch in cinema?
For me, this is a watch in cinema.
Oh, okay.
You mentioned the soundtrack. I thought the fight scenes were exceptional, including this, the visual at Dodger Stadium and the visual where they're kind of fighting their demons with everything blacked out. I thought this was a must-see in cinemas, even though the story itself isn't super great. I thought just because of these other elements, you should go see it on the big screen.
So I got to just say, before I give my score, congratulations. This is the first must watch in cinema from Ethan in 2023.
That's right.
For me, unfortunately, it is not a must watch in cinema. It is a wait for streaming. I think that the movie is more than serviceable. It's good. Don't get me wrong, but I think that it's ultimately formulaic. It's nothing we haven't seen before. I know that this goes out of the scope of our normal review system, but if you are on the fence between watching it in the theater versus waiting a few weeks and watching it at home, do yourself a favor, go watch it in the theater, because you will not be able to replicate the audiovisual experience of the fight sequences at home.
That's right.
Having said that, despite all of that, and despite my praises for the choreography, I think that this was just another generic sports/boxing movie, which is, again, not a bad thing. I don't think I need to go see it in the cinema.
Okay, so there you have it. That is the Films and Stuff review of Creed 3. Stay tuned. We seem to be expecting more Creeds in the future. Seems to be Michael B. Jordan's things. He was the director now, right? He took over for Ryan Coogler.
Actually, you raised a good point. So just a quick shout out for a directorial debut. Very good work.
Yep, very good work.
So good for him. I'm glad to see him step behind the camera. It can't be easy to be behind and in front of the camera simultaneously. So good for him.
Yeah. And Jonathan Weathers is like the breakout, I think, already of 2023, right? I mean, Jonathan Majors, Carl Weathers. Yeah. So Jonathan Majors is like the breakout star of 2023, right? Big role in Ant-Man, big role in Creed, right? So I mean, he's already had a huge year.
I just hope that he doesn't get typecast, right? Because now this is the second role within a month we've seen as the quiet and like super filled with rage and angry
and kind of kooky, right? He's got this very, like, I saw this with Kang the Conqueror, and I saw it a little bit with him playing Dame, where he's got like a little bit of this like creepy, kooky sense of humor as well, you know? Like almost like a playful, where he's trying to like bait you or trying to like, be intentionally villainous.
Yeah, something where if you weren't paying attention to it, you would just think that it's kind of funny, but not quite. But if you were paying attention to it, you'd be scared.
Yeah. So I saw a lot of parallels between those two characters. And maybe that's because those are the two movies that we've seen within a week of each other. He's pretty talented, but again, those two characters, Kang and Dame, were played in a very, very similar way.
Exactly. So I think that, again, I hope that he doesn't get typecast. I don't want to see, I want to see more of Jonathan Majors. I always want to see more of Jonathan Majors. I just don't want to see the same thing again and again for him.
do you want to see him in another Creed? If you have to see another Creed, do you want Majors in it?
You know they'll bring him back for it, even if they're not the main guys. Just like they brought Drago back in this one.
Yeah.
It's a quick and easy way of linking movies. So
yeah. Okay. All right. Creed 3.
Perfect. So it is a must-watch in cinema for Ethan. It is a wait for streaming for me. That is Creed 3 with Michael B. Jordan and Jonathan Majors and Tessa Thompson.
That's right.
If you've got any thoughts, please drop us a line, leave us a comment below this video, or tweet at us at F&S Podcast, or DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast, or send us an email. Aloha at filmsandstuffpodcast.com.
Super. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And Pete, as always, pleasure to talk about this film with you.
Thanks, Ethan. Bye, everyone.
All right. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.